Yo, what's up, gamers? So, I walked into the break room today and Todd from HR has removed every console in the room. The PlayStation's gone, the Xbox is gone, the disc shelf is unplugged for some reason, and sitting under the TV is one little tiny streaming stick. So I'm like, Todd, where did all the games go? And Todd just smiles and says, don't worry, the future is in the cloud. So when I look at the TV, it just says service unavailable. Like he did not realize he just built the entire break room around somebody else's server. And that's when I remembered, Google tried selling the future of gaming once, and then they shut the whole future down. So now I welcome you back to the Janitor Files, a series where we mop up gaming's biggest disasters, corporate failures, and the messes the industry does not clean up. So before we get into this, do me a favor, hit like, subscribe, and help me keep this break room from buffering forever. So now let me ask you, was Google Stadia a bad idea, or did Google give up too soon? Drop your take in the comments below. So now let's grab a mop, because this time the break room put all its game in the cloud, and then the cloud left the building, so now I have to recover them and clean this mess up. But I'm gonna need your help too, so come along. But before Stadia could fail, we need to talk about what Google was actually trying to sell. Cloud gaming sounds complicated, but the basic idea is pretty simple. The game is not running in your living room, it's running somewhere else, on a server. Your TV, your laptop, your phone, your tablet, or your browser is basically watching a live video feed of that game. And here's the important part, you're not just watching it, you're controlling it. So when you press jump, that button press travels through the internet, hits the server, and the server tells the game to jump. And then the video of that jump gets streamed back to your screen, which is fine, until your internet starts moving like Gary from IT after lunch. Because the promise sounds magical. No expensive console, no giant downloads, no hardware upgrades, no update file staring at you like it pays rent. Just open the game, click play, and start. That was the dream, but the catch is simple. If your internet is bad, the game feels bad. If the connection lags, your character lags. If the servers have problems, you have problems. And if the server disappears, the game disappears with it. That was the warning label sitting on the box before Stadia even launched, and Google was not the first company to test this idea. OnLive had already tried cloud gaming years earlier and shut down. PlayStation now existed, Microsoft was moving toward what would become xCloud. So Google was not walking into an empty room, they were walking into a break room where other companies had already slipped on the wet floor and left warning cones everywhere. But once you understand cloud gaming, you can see why Google looked dangerous on paper. And that's because Google was not some random startup walking into gaming with a dream, a hoodie, and one overheated laptop. This was Google. They have money, they have servers, they have a cloud infrastructure, they have Chrome, they have Android, they have Google Play, and they have YouTube. That part matters a lot, because YouTube was already one of the biggest places on earth where people discovered games at the time. Trailers, reviews, live streams, let's plays, reaction videos, the gaming hype machine was already running through Google's house, so the pitch made sense. You watch a trailer on YouTube, you click a button, and boom, you're playing the game instantly. And Chrome was everywhere in laptops, desktops, school computers, work computers nobody was supposed to be gaming on, and then you had Android with a massive mobile audience already trained to play games on phones and tablets. And behind all of that, Google Cloud had data centers around the world. So on paper, this made sense. If any company looked powerful enough to make cloud gaming work, it was Google. But there was one problem hiding in the corner of the break room, the Google graveyard. Gamers already knew Google had a reputation for destroying products, and Stadia was about to ask players to buy into a future where games lived on Google servers. That meant Google did not just need working technology, they needed trust. But before Stadia became Stadia, Google ran a test that made people think, wait, this might actually work. Back then, Google had been circling around cloud gaming for a while. There were reports and rumors about internal experimentations, names like Project Yeti floating around. Basically, Google was looking at gaming and thinking, what if the console did not have to be in your house at all? Then in October 2018, Google announced Project Stream, and this was the test that made people actually pay attention. Project Stream let players run Assassin's Creed Odyssey through Chrome. No console, no download, no giant install screen. Just open the browser, click the game, and suddenly your laptop is running around ancient Greece like Chrome had been secretly training in the break room after hours. And for a lot of players, it looked better than expected. Was it perfect? No. Cloud gaming still had the usual problems. Internet quality mattered, latency mattered, connection stability mattered, but the important part was, it was playable. And that changed the conversation, because Project Stream was not just a stage demo hiding behind smoke and lightning, it was a real public test. People could try it, people could see it, and Google could point at Chrome and say, look, the browser can actually do this. Project Stream was the proof of concept. Stadia was Google looking at the test and saying, what if this became the whole platform? And when Google finally revealed Stadia, they did not pitch it like a small experiment, they pitched it like the console itself was about to become outdated furniture. Then came the big reveal, March 19, 2019, at the Game Developers Conference, GDC. Google officially announced Stadia. They did not present this like a side project, they presented it like gaming was about to change forever. Phil Harrison walked out and pitched a future where you did not need a console under your TV. No box, no disc tray, no giant plastic rectangle humming in the entertainment center like it pays utilities. Just all the screens that mattered. The pitch was simple. You can play anywhere. Start watching a trailer on YouTube, click the button, and instantly jump into the game. YouTube was not just where you watch games anymore, it was supposed to become the front door to playing them. And Google had big ideas, like crowd play where viewers can join a streamer's game, state share where players could share a specific moment or game state, Steam Connection where multiplayer games could show other players' screens in real time, and on paper, that sounded futuristic. And then Google started throwing down the big numbers like 4K, 60 frames per second, HDR, 5.1 surround sound, and eventually they even talked about 8K and 120 frames per second. Google walked on stage acting like the console was already packed in a retirement home, sitting next to a flip phone and a Blockbuster card. This was not Google saying, hey, maybe try our gaming app. This was Google saying, why do you even need a console anymore? Google was not just launching a service, they were announcing the death of the box. And the moment people tried to understand how Stadia actually worked, the pitch started getting foggy. This is where Stadia started getting messy, because a lot of people heard cloud gaming at the time and immediately thought, oh, so this is Netflix for games. You pay one monthly price, you get a big library, you click something, and you get to play it. Simple, but that is not really what Stadia was. Stadia was mostly a digital store in the cloud. You still had to buy a lot of games individually. Full price games, real prices, except instead of buying them on PlayStation or Xbox or even Steam, you were buying them on Google's cloud platform. That raised one very obvious question. Why? Why buy the cloud version of a game instead of the version that works on hardware you already trust? Then there was Stadia Pro, and Stadia Pro made things even more confusing, because it just sounded like the same subscription, but it was really more about higher streaming quality, monthly claimable games, and discounts. So if you wanted the full experience at launch, you were looking at the Founders Edition, a paid subscription, still buying games separately. Meanwhile, a free tier came later. Is this a console replacement? Is this a subscription? Is this a storefront? Is this Google's version of Steam? Is this supposed to compete with Game Pass? And that comparison hurt, because Game Pass felt closer to what people thought Stadia was going to be. Pay a monthly fee, get a big rotating library, download or stream games. Easy to understand because Stadia sounded like Netflix for games, but a lot of the time it worked more like buying digital games inside a store you were not sure Google would keep open. Stadia launched on November 19, 2019 in 14 countries. Google's big cloud gaming future was officially here. Kind of, because at first, Stadia was mainly for Founders Edition buyers. So after all the talk about gaming everywhere, the launch still felt gated behind a paid starter kit. The people saw the actual launch library, and it was small. There were some good games there, but not enough to make people say, I need Stadia right now. And that was a problem, because if you're trying to replace a console, you need more convenience, you need a reason, you need games people cannot ignore. You need something that makes players look at their PlayStation, Xbox, or PC and say, okay, maybe I do need this cloud thing. Stadia did not really have that at launch, and it was not just a game, some of the biggest promised features were missing or limited. The YouTube integration was not fully there, crowd play was not the revolution people expected on day one, state share was not changing the industry at launch, and some players started questioning the 4K quality claims on certain games. Now, to be fair, for some people with strong internet, Stadia could work surprisingly well. Low setup, quick access, smooth enough to make you go, wait, this is actually kind of impressive. But for other people, latency showed up, connection problems showed up, Inconsistency showed up, and when your whole platform depends on the internet behaving perfectly, that is a dangerous janitor closet to lock yourself inside. A lot of the reviewers described Stadia like it was still in beta, and now is a bigger issue. It works sometimes, but it works was not enough. Not after Google promised a future, because Google sold that future of gaming, but launched something that felt like a tech demo wearing a price tag. And for a platform trying to replace consoles, the biggest missing piece was obvious. There were no games you could not get anywhere else. It needed platform games, not just ports, not just games you could already buy somewhere else. It needed a reason to exist. Xbox had Halo, Nintendo had Mario and Zelda, PlayStation had God of War, The Last of Us, Spider-Man, and a whole shelf of reasons to care. Stadia needed something like that. A game that made people say, okay, I cannot play this anywhere else. Maybe I do need Stadia. And Google seemed to understand that at first. In 2019, they created Stadia Games and Entertainment. It brought in Jade Raymond to lead it. They started building internal studios. They even acquired Typhoon Studios, the team behind Journey to the Savage Planet. So for a moment, it looked like Google was actually serious. Not just serious about streaming games, but serious about making games. Because if you want players to trust a new platform, you have to show them you are willing to invest in it. But then February 1st, 2021 happened. Google announced it was shutting down its internal Stadia game studios. Around 150 developers were affected, Jade Raymond left, and Stadia lost its first-party future, before it ever had a chance to define itself. That was the moment the Google graveyard stopped being a meme and started tapping on Stadia's window. Because Google did not just need the cloud servers, they needed games, they needed identity, they needed something players could point to and say, this is why Stadia matters. And that's what makes the next part so weird, because for one brief moment, Stadia looked like the answer to somebody else's disaster. Then came the weirdest twist in the whole story, Cyberpunk 2077. If you remember our Cyberpunk Janitor Files episode, that launch was a mess. December 2020, massive hype, years of promises, and then the base PS4 and Xbox One versions showed up looking like they had been assembled during a fire drill. Bugs, crashes, texture problems, performance issues, cars spawning like Night City had lost its entire HR department. It was ugly, but here's the weirdest part. During one of gaming's messiest launches, Stadia briefly looked like one of the cleanest ways to play Cyberpunk 2077. It wasn't perfect, but for a lot of players, the Stadia version ran surprisingly well compared to the old console versions. It avoided some of the worst console-specific problems because the game was not relying on aging hardware sitting under your TV. It was running on Google servers. And for a short time, people were actually saying, wait, is Stadia the best way to play this? That should have been a huge moment because this proved something important. The tech had potential, the dream was not completely fake, cloud gaming could solve certain problems, no console upgrade was required, no giant install, no old hardware trying to survive a next-gen game like Todd from HR trying to lift a vending machine alone. Somehow, during one of gaming's biggest disaster fires, Stadia walked in holding a fire extinguisher and said, "Need me?" But one strong moment could not fix everything else. It could not fix the trust problem, it could not fix the confusing business model, it could not fix the weak library, and it definitely could not fix the lack of exclusives. That is what makes Stadia so strange. The tech was not always the problem, the platform was. And once players stopped believing in the platform, the shutdown started feeling less like a surprise and more like a countdown. After all of that, Stadia entered the worst phase any platform can enter. Not dead, not alive, just floating around while everybody asks, wait, is Google still doing this? Because Stadia did not explode overnight. It slowly drifted from the future of gaming to, is Google still serious about this? The service was still there, games were still being added, some players still liked it, but the energy had changed. Google had already shut down its internal game studios. The first-party future was gone, and instead of feeling like Stadia was about to take over gaming, it started feeling like Google was trying to figure out what to do with the technology. At one point, Google explored using the tech in other ways, including white labeling its immersed stream for games. Basically, if Stadia was not going to become the gaming platform, maybe the technology underneath it could still be useful somewhere else. And then came September 29th, 2022, Google announced Stadia was shutting down. Phil Harrison wrote that Stadia had a strong technology foundation, but it hasn't gained the traction with users that we expected. And that sentence became the death certificate, not just for Stadia, but for Google's version of the streaming future. After all the talk about instant play, YouTube integration, cloud power, and the death of the box, The official answer was not enough people showed up. The service shut down on January 18, 2023, and the fallout was rough. Some developers were blindsided. One studio had reportedly signed a published agreement shortly before the announcement. Some Google contacts apparently found out at the same time as everyone else. So imagine building for this platform, planning around this platform, maybe betting your future on this platform, and then finding out the cloud has an expiration date. The cloud did not explode, it just quietly packed a lunch, turned off the lights, and left a group chat. But to Google's credit, the shutdown had one part that was surprisingly consumer friendly. They gave players refunds. Google refunded Stadia hardware purchases through the Google Store. They refunded game purchases. They refunded add-on content bought through the Stadia server. Now, Stadia Pro subscriptions were not refunded, but players could still keep using Pro benefits until the service shut down. And in most regions, people did not even have to send the hardware back. And that part mattered, because for a platform built around games living on someone else's servers, players were staring at a very real ownership question. What happens when the company leaves? And Google's answer was basically, we are closing the doors, but we are giving you your money back on a lot of what you bought. That was more consumer friendly than many people expected. Google deserves credit for that one. Even though refunds softened the hit, they did not erase the lesson, because the games were still gone, the store was still gone, the platform was still gone, and even the controller needed a rescue plan. Google released a Bluetooth update tool so the Stadia controller could be used after the platform died, which is good, but also kinda wild. Even the controller needed a witness protection program, and that controller made the perfect symbol for Stadia, a solid piece of hardware built for a future that disappeared. So here's my take on all of this. Stadia did not prove cloud gaming is impossible. That would be too simple. Cloud gaming still exists. GeForce Now still exists. PlayStation has streaming, Amazon Luna is still out there, so the idea did not die with Stadia. But Stadia proved something way more important. Technology just isn't enough. Because the tech could work, Project Stream proved it had potential, Cyberpunk proved it could actually help in the right situation, but players need more than just a working stream. They need trust, they need a library, they need clear pricing, they need to understand what they're buying, and they need to believe the company behind the platform is not going to unplug the whole thing when the numbers get uncomfortable. That is why Stadia still matters. Because this is bigger than one dead Google product. We saw ownership questions with the Crew shutdown. We see them with live service games disappearing. We see them with delistings. We see them with movements like Stop Killing Games. And Stadia raised a question players are still asking now. What do we actually own? Because when a game only exists on someone else's servers, ownership starts sounding a lot like licensed access until we shut it down. And that is the real mess. Stadia did not fail because cloud gaming could never work. Stadia failed because Google built impressive technology wrapped in a confusing platform, forgot to give players enough reasons to trust it, and then proved those trust issues right. Now we're back in the break room. Todd from HR is still staring at the TV, the console is gone, the streaming stick is blinking, and the screen just says service ended. Todd just looks at me and says, "Good news! We saved shelf space." And I'm like, cool, except now nobody can play anything until we fix this up. Well, that's all I got. I gotta bounce before Todd from HR starts to move the mop closet to the cloud and charges me monthly to access the bucket. But before I go, do me a favor. Hit like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want more gaming disasters cleaned up from the break room, and comment down below. Was Stadia doomed from the start, or did Google quit right before cloud gaming finally made sense? This is Scruffy the Janitor signing off. Peace out.